Welcome to the Comic Watchers Show. I'm your host, Matt Meyer. With me, as always, is Nicholas Osborne, hailing from Eastern Texas, a newly liberated, mask-free zone for germs. Mike Eakins is taking a little bit of family time tonight. Mike, I hope your wife gets to feeling better. Our best to Nicole. Our guest this week is a letterer legend, Dave Sharpe. Hey, welcome to our silly little show.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Well, we're here.
We're here.
Yeah, it's a blustery day in Oklahoma. I think we're going to get some storms tonight, as is our way as we ease into spring.
Okay.
So, Nick, how are you this evening?
Doing pretty well. We're making it like Texas is an odd place to be right now, but we're here. I'm glad to talk some comics, that's for sure.
Cool.
Dave, you've got over 30 years in the game, and you've basically lettered for pretty much every publisher, every character. I mean, but I typically with these things, I have a few basic talking points. This is the highlight of your career. Let's talk about that. This is the new project. But dude, you've done everything, and I just, for those listening, what are you working on right now?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So as everyone knows, like DC. So my source. Let me start over. So I was like a big Marvel letterer for like 20 years.
Right.
And then things happened there where I almost went over to DC as my main house. But since then, like the last few years, DC has slowly changed their publishing line, and especially the last year, right? It's been a little different. And what they're just putting out a handful of titles. So I'm working on, I really am blessed to work on just the tons of different stuff. So I'm doing Superman and Action Comics for DC. I've been doing those. I jumped on about halfway through the Bendis run. And then, so it's been about almost 2, maybe 3 years now. And then let's see. So Aftershock, I do quite a bit. I've known Mike Martz for a long time.
Sure.
I'm doing some of their really big titles like We Live. And
beautiful book.
Yeah, great stuff. Kaiju Score. And a couple of other stuff that I've done. I do like 2 or 3 titles for them, and the last year I think I've done like 15 logos. So like almost every logo you see in the last year or two on Aftershock are mostly mine, which is
That's
cool.
incredible.
Yeah, it's actually really cool. I've done more logo work in the last year than a long time.
Is that something that you have just kind of recently started getting into?
So I'm really okay. So we'll get back to this later, but I'm really heavy metal, right? And a lot of my my logos are metal. Like it's so hard for me to break out and do something different. I could do some different stuff, but what happens often, I don't like doing logos. It's a lot of work. People usually don't want to pay, understandably. And I understand why they don't want to, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of back and forth, and then I'm really stuck in a certain style, and I don't mean to be, but like everything I hand in is like, well, this looks like Iron Maiden. It's like, I know, I don't want it to be an Iron Maiden logo, but and so I guess I was like a year or two, like 2 years ago, Mike Martz was like, hey Dave, do you do logos? I was like, I'd love to do some. And the Aftershock logos, they're so different. They're not superhero, they're so many different stuff. And so I get to, I was able to exercise a lot of, and I like doing little graphic things. So if you see my logos, you'll see like Miskatonic's got like a little octopus on it, and stuff like that. So I like to do things like that. And so Mike Martz has really taken a chance to he just gave me one after another, and I just kept popping them out. So that's and they pay fair. So I've had other, like I work some independents, and they're just like, well, I'll give you $15 for logos. Like, I don't want to do it. I'm just not, like, why not? I don't want to do it, So anyway, so Aftershock. Valiant was a big house there for a while, and so they kind of have gone not away. I'm proud to say that Ninjak just got started back up. So we'll see Ninjak soon, like within a few months. That kind of, I'm working on issue number 2 tomorrow. So We just finished Bloodshot, and so I'm hoping. And I know I got another one coming up from them. So Valiant's starting to do some more stuff. Really excited to work with A Bad Idea. That's Warren Simons. Yeah, I'm almost that I can tell I'm doing all their lettering. Like it's ENIAC and that got released yesterday, I think.
Yeah, that just came out.
It's already like $30 or something. It's ridiculous. You're not apparently they got like 30-day notice. You're not supposed to sell it above cost for 30 days if you were. And so I think they even dropped the distributor or a shop because they're already failed. So
yeah, they like permanently banned one for taking up the price that was above cover
right. Which is I get it. They're trying to they want a model that's going to last a few years, not just like jump in and make money and get out. So I appreciate that. I've known Joe Illage for a while, and he's now at Heavy Metal, so I'm doing some heavy metal stuff too. There's the last few issues have been Savage Circus, which is like literally a circus car gets free. It's almost like Jumanji and is terrorizing an English town. And then some Vaz and Crunch is like this barbarian stuff. But yeah, so heavy metal, that's relatively new. Also yeah. And then the Kickstarters. I do a lot of them. I did the one for Sal that you guys covered a couple weeks ago. The Brazil one, which was really awesome. The hostage.
Yep.
And then I do a lot of local cons. So I meet some good friends there. And I wish I was able to come on a couple weeks ago. That was my fault. But because both the Sal's Kickstarter and the other Kickstarter I was working on, it's called Lords of Chaos, and it's like a friend of mine does some local conventions, and he did like an evil Masters of the Universe. So yeah, like the first 3 or 4 books is all telling the stories of the bad guys, the good guys. So and it's like totally insane. He's out of his mind. He works for the Church of Satan and stuff. So this stuff is really extreme, but it's palatable. It's not like he made this stuff for only adults, but he gets out there and does a lot of stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's and the other thing I'm doing quietly is Abram's book is doing some graphic novels now. So I'm knocking out some of those. So yeah, I'm constantly hustling.
So I mean, you've been in the business for as long as you have, and you've worked with countless writers. How do you have to modify your approach for each writer? Because you specifically mentioned working on Bendis's Superman books, and he's notoriously wordy.
Yes.
There's often been times where I've felt bad for the letterers of Bendis comics.
You should. So Bendis likes to work with me, and I don't mind working with Bendis. He's a bit I don't know him personally, so I don't want to say anything about character or anything like that, right? There's nothing I know. So I just know that people take different routes, and some writers go around different ways. He's got a little bit of clout, so he gets to do things a little differently. Not everyone gets to get away with some of the stuff he gets away with, and that's okay. Again, I don't have a problem with it. It's really not a huge deal. Some people do. I know some letterers that will not work with him. I think and vice versa though. It's not like he wants to work with them either. So, what he does though, you can. The beginning of every script literally is the same copied and paste line that says to the artist, "Go wild, do whatever you want." I like coming in after the first draft and changing things. So, and that's like a copy and paste. So it's not even but that's when I did that. I was doing Legion. There was 12 issues of Legion that he did too, and I was working on those. You get in some. He knew I kind of had an idea what he wanted. I mean, some of his stuff is not what I like to do. There's placement things that he likes to do that I don't like to do, etc. But that doesn't, that doesn't make him wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just makes that. I thought he was, but only because I think lettering should be this and this. You put it here and this goes here and that reads this way, right? And so he has. If you look at those books, you might even to yourself say, "Why is this caption over here?" It doesn't always make a lot of sense, but I always thought that he wrote well. And so it was a lot of work. It was probably amongst the most rewarding working for Bendis, but it's a lot of work, a lot of anxiety attacks. So
Sure.
what I mean by that is like, you do the book and it takes a while. He's wordy, so it takes a while to do the book more than normal. You hand it in, and a week later it comes back and it's like rewritten. And so now it's okay, because DC was really good about, if they're going to do that, they're going to pay for heavy corrections. Not a lot, but they'll pay. So I can live with that. And I know that's what's going to happen. And it's Bendis. So like, you look at Superman, it's also Superman. So like, at what point do what point do you like, I'm not going to work on this? It's like, it's Superman.
Right.
I totally want to put that on in my quiver, So I didn't complain a lot, and so I think a lot of that goes a long way, and so, but yeah, it can be trying. That you get like this markup the next Monday morning, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is going to take as long to correct it as it did to letter it. But my editors are awesome, and they almost always give me the time to do it. So that's, I get upset when when you're like, oh, I need this back now, and it's impossible to do. But they're usually pretty good about, like, they know that book's going to have a problem. The manufacturing knows that book's going to have a problem. The production knows it's going to have. So all the way down the line, they understand, like, hey, this book has like a red flag next to it. We got to make sure it goes. So, yeah.
Nick, do you want to go ahead?
Definitely. Now, I want to dive back into some of your graphic design that you do and logos and what you bring to the table with lettering, because some of my favorite work from yours has been on the Harley Quinn series.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Someone noticed.
Yes, it's so iconic.
Oh my gosh, dude. I thank you so much for that. Go ahead.
It's so true. And really, I could just gush over that for like an hour, but I'll try to
You really could.
It really is. It kind of reminiscent of what letterers bring to the table in books that help elevate them, and you get to really see that with Harley Quinn and the design elements that kind of help to carry the story. I just want to see, about your process in that and what it takes for certain characters like this and what you bring to the table.
Almost to the point where I'm annoyed that other people are lettering her. I lettered her for like, so it did like the whole Jimmy and Amanda run kind of thing. Yeah. And good friends with them. And that's another pump. I'll be doing their Red Sonja book.
Nice.
So now that said, love them. I count them as friends. Them I know personally. Jimmy started Marvel Comics like the day I started Marvel Comics, kind of thing. So like we've known each other for decades now. They're also a little tricky to work with. A lot of we get, people have different styles, right? So have you noticed if you read the Harley Quinn stuff, you notice that like every other word's bolded.
Yeah.
Like if go look at it again, like almost every other word is bold. And that can be a little difficult. Like just that alone, going through the page, bold, 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 every bold, and then I took it upon myself. They said, "Hey, Dave, go wild if you want." And so I blew out those words. Like whenever like she blows out a word, in my head that's how she was talking. Like that squeaky voice. It's like, oh, hey, put in. And so I would put in a big red or blue using either red or blue, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I really had fun with that. That probably took me twice as long to letter than any book, but that's my fault. Like I could have just knocked it out and just done the pedestrian job. But I love Harley Quinn, and I really felt that it was so well written. And if you read it, you read the whole thing, even when they were off it, and then like I forget the writer that jumped on that. Oh my goodness! And like here is her mom is dying. I mean, that's a pretty emotional roller coaster that they put her on.
Yeah, that was Sam Humphries' run.
Yes, that's right. It was Sam Humphries. Yeah. And that was. I mean, I remember lettering it, being like, "Oh my goodness, this is like." Right. I really felt like what he was writing. I haven't talked to him, but I was like, is he suffering something like this? Because it felt like from the heart.
Humphries is processing.
Yeah, I think so. But I really, I appreciate you noticing that, because I remember doing it like, is anyone, and if you saw Red Tool, giving him like all the tools. Now that was not all my idea. I was working with the bullpen, the DC bullpen at the time to do that. So I can't take credit for all of that, but I did some of that's going back and forth with the design of them. Yeah. Sometimes with DC, like they have a certain thing they want you to do. So like sometimes with them, you got to stay within parameters of what they've already set. But that's cool. It's not a huge deal.
Yeah, definitely like some of the saw blades for red tool in the letters.
Yeah,
Stuff
those,
like that. Yeah.
and those work out
Yeah.
so great, you know. If you notice, so like it makes me start putting balloons everywhere. Like Harley Quinn does no such thing as gutters, right? Because I'm just wherever I can put stuff. But it works, you know. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that really just kind of is a great example of what letterers can do for both design and storytelling. And I think it's such a great example.
Yeah, I think you're right. That like if I would point to anyone like my best work, it might be that Harley Quinn series, just because I poured so much of myself into it, if you will. So yeah.
Absolutely, and you can feel it too. So it's just outstanding work.
Hooray! Thank you.
I think that says a lot about what an unsung contributor the letterer is on any book, right?
Yes.
You know, oftentimes they work and they're the artists that we're not thinking about because we're looking at the pretty pictures and the colors and well, maybe inkers. I don't know. Yeah,
the poor tracers, right?
Yes.
It's just terrible.
Yes, it's been 24 years since chasing Amy, and there's still the fucking tracers.
There's still the tracers. It's terrible. Terrible.
No, not really. We love you, inkers.
The colorist, though, you're right. But there was a level where the colorist jumped the inker.
Yeah.
Like once we went to better paper, and they stopped using Dr. Dyes, you know. So,
and I mean, that was such an awkward transition too, because all of a sudden it's like, you know, it's 1995, 96, and here's the digital coloring. It's the hot new thing, and you know, we look at it now. It's like, oh shit, that is garish. But now we're better at it. We know what we're doing.
My only problem with it, and I say this with hesitance because like it means that it puts my colorist friends out of jobs. Is that's why comics are $5 though. Because you're printing on magazine paper, or better than magazine paper. Yeah, that stuff is expensive, right? That's newsprint. You could 35 cents an issue because it's newsprint, you know.
Yeah.
The problem is, you guys, the coloring, the way it was done, was insane. So I don't know how you go back. You know, it was literally these guys would be coloring like Xeroxes and send this out to the press houses, and they would have like people sitting there cutting red, yellow, and blue lithographs and putting them together to get what the colorist had colored. So I mean, it really was an insane thing. It's better for now it's a much easier process, but it costs a ton more. So
yeah, definitely. Sure. I'd like to bring that around maybe a little bit more to the letters, and you know, how has your craft evolved from that time? You know,
Nick, you
before the digital rise, and
I paint myself the villain in this story, but because 93, so I graduate Kubert School 90, like within a month I'm at the Marvel bullpen through no fault of my own. It's because the Kubert School, especially then, was really good about help placing, and if not directly, indirectly. So if you worked at Marvel and we needed someone, you'd call the school, hey, we need, you know. So I got that call. I was amongst a couple of from my class that went in. I got chosen to be the one. And so we would do lettering houses. We were doing lettering corrections by hand, because that 90, up to 94, 95, everything's by hand. We would everything then was also to try to get ahead. They were doing things on vellum. So we'd be lettering on vellum, and then we'd have 10 people on staff that would paste the vellum up onto the boards. And because that way we can get it, the inker could ink, and we could do the lettering, and you could just get ahead on stuff. And then, and then all of a sudden, 94, 95, Macintosh starts making these Power Macs, and they can start really moving not just pixels, but algorithms around in terms of like Illustrator is nothing but X, Y, Z, and like in sine and cosine and all this crap. And so once they figured out how you can get all that to work, it was like, this is what's going to happen. And it was like this. So the Marvel bullpen was hopping, like, we're going to go this way. We're going to go this way. Well, probably we're still like 5 years away from doing it. But there was so much work in 93 that I probably shouldn't have left staff, but I was working. I'd get to Marvel and work a full day of corrections, and then get like an 8 or 10 page book to letter. bring it home at night, letter it, bring it back in, and then go back. And so I was like maybe sleeping an hour or two a day, or I was sleeping on the train, like because I worked on Long Island, and I live in Pennsylvania now. So we lived on Long Island, and I an hour and a half train into Manhattan, an hour and a half back, and so that was my sleep almost. I was young, so you know you can go without for a while, and so I was like, well, I'm going to go freelance. I got plenty of work. Well, because there was so much work. Like, Marvel was even doing Disney comics at that point. I mean, the stuff I was lettering was really stupid. It wasn't any, like I wasn't on, well, in other words, I wasn't on any major book. I was like, Disney DuckTales, not the DuckTales was stupid, but like there was like their throwaway stuff, and so, but there was so much work. And so for a good couple of years, I worked from home, and then like 95, the whole thing drops out, right? If you remember, the whole thing drops out. And so I'm at home. I think at that point, my wife is pregnant, but like just pregnant. Like, so we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Always had friends at Marvel at that time. And so they got me back on staff. But during that last year of like 95, 96, I bought a computer. My mom was like, you need to do this. She's always been helpful. My parents have always been helpful. And so they were like, you need to move in shape with the times, And so like they lent me money to buy a Power Mac. Oh, goodness, 6100, whatever it was, gigantic monolith, and these huge CRT screens, and I taught myself Illustrator. And when I got back on staff, I was one of the few people that knew what I was doing. Everyone kind of see their pants,
ahead of the curve.
I knew Illustrator really fluid. Like it literally, you go through what was called the Illustrators school in a book, or that kind of thing. And so it was like 15 lessons, and it made me a master. And I'm like, no kidding, I was really good. I still am really good at it. I was like, yeah, this is amazing. So
security.
So then they're like, and so I don't want to. So I'm not going to go too much into this stuff. I do want to. If I want to put a slight plug. If you look on podcasts, I'm in a couple of bands. And one of my bands, one of my guitarists, his name is Ian Strong. He's got a podcast called Ian Strong, or Strong Words by Ian Strong. Okay, you can look it up and you'll see it. His like first episode is like a shoot interview with me. And so I probably it's probably why I don't work at Marvel anymore. So, I mean, it's not true, but if you listen to that interview, you'll be like, I don't know if I should have said that or that. So that interview will cover some of those things I'm not going to cover here. But at X point, they asked me to start the lettering department.
Right.
I didn't want to. But they I'm not going to say they threatened my job, but that was certainly implied. They're like, well, if you don't, there's no place for you. It's like, okay, well. So
yes, I'll promote.
Yeah, and like the only thing I'll say bad, and it wasn't a bad thing. Like it's just you grow and you learn. I just remember at the time I was fighting for my life for getting a raise from like 28K to like 36K or something, and they were like, "Oh, this is a big raise," and I'm like, and I think back now I was like 36K. And here I am. I was losing my mind about, oh no, are they going to give me this much money? And I should have been asking for 50 or 60, because when I stepped down, they looked for someone, and like 5 people came in. They were like, "Ha! You people are out of your mind," And so at that point, Marvel went digital totally with like Chris Eliopoulos leading virtual calligraphy. Good friend of mine. I have no problem with him. But some people he used were the people that I had on staff, Corey Pettit, and Joe Caramanga, a good friend of mine. He was also from the Cuban School. He was one I called him in as an intern, and then he's awesome. So like I don't mean to say like I broke him, because he was that good to begin with. So
sure.
All credit to him. And Chris is the man. Chris is like my Yoda, When things were going bad, I think, to be fair, I think he was the one that actually hit me up with Valiant, about 10 years ago. So, some of us are really good friends. We try to watch out for each other, and so I want to give him a lot of credit. And I want to give Marvel credit too. Like I could say some bad things, but ultimately they made me, and it gave me. And then when I left staff, they gave me work for like a good 6 or 7 years. It just was right around 2010. Chris's contract took over, and they didn't want me working separate, and I didn't want to work under him. So we parted ways at that point. So not a bad thing. It's just, I wish I still worked at it. I worked for them for 20 years. And so not doing Marvel work, and then like you quit Marvel, or stop working for Marvel, and of course they blow up, and everyone's like, oh, look, Marvel, look at all the movies. I'm like, yeah, it's
Right.
great. So that was not bitter by any means, but I was like, but that's all right. So DC, luckily, if you guys know comics, which I'm sure you do, relatively incestuous business. When people work at one company, they have worked for all of them. We jump around like, it's just ridiculous. So when I went to DC, Bob Harris was the editor-in-chief, Bobby Chase was over there, and those are good friends of mine from Marvel. So the leap to DC was really easy, to be fair. The first part, like that, I was there for 1 year. We have a party after the New York, and I walked down into the DC party, and I knew half the people from Marvel. That now worked for DC. So, and manufacturing, not just like the editors, but the other people underneath things that people don't know. And I was like, oh my goodness, look at all these people. So,
well, that's pretty cool though.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So I don't know if to answer your question. It's just, it went from basically lettering by hand and almost overnight to digitally.
I mean, it switched. I mean, it happened quick.
It happened quick.
I can remember being a youngish reader at the time.
Yeah.
And it was like all of a sudden, the editor's footnote boxes were these funky looking little computer blips, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
so.
it felt like a long time during those 3 or 5 years, but looking back, you're right. It was like really just boom. Yeah. Like it felt like over. Yeah, it really happened overnight. So,
and I always ask because going back to what we were saying about letters kind of being unsung heroes. What was the initial appeal of wanting to be a letterer? Like, I mean, okay. Did you look at John Workman and be like, "Holy shit, I want to do that"?
No. It started. And I don't use it. Not literally. I hate using that word here. I'm using it figuratively. So you're an artist in high school, right? And you're the best artist in high school. You're just the bee's knees, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, draw me!" You get like best artist. You get the end of yearbook like the artist of the year or whatever. And then you go to art school, and then you meet people that just draw rings around you,
right?
And it's actually debilitating. Like it's really devastating. Mm-hmm. So I went to the Kubert school, and like it's 120 kids. Not all kids. Some of them have gone to college for 4 years, and now they're like, I want to go to art school, and I want to go to comic book. And so not all kids, and relatively expensive at the time. It's still expensive school.
Sure.
And I was a mess in high school, so I don't know how my parents thought that they could send me to art school, but they did. So, and so. I remember working so hard and just being like, I come from my classmates are Steve Lieber. So then a lot of us are lettering. So John Kalis, is a big colorist. Rob Lee is a letterer. Andy Price is like been doing all those made $1 million on My Little Pony. Let's see, like who else is in my class? A handful of people from my class have like made it, No one like Steve Lieber, I think, is the one who's most made with his artwork. But a lot of us are lettering and coloring. And I think so. What happens is you get there like, well, I still want to work in comics. I don't think I could pencil. I don't think I can make money penciling a book. Even now, I've done some. If you look around some of the independents, you'll find I do pinups. I will do a pinup here and there. So I get some of my artwork out there. But like for me to make a living drawing comics is ridiculous. It's like it's so far beyond what people think. And you have to be a god at penciling. I mean, like even like the worst penciler you can think of is better than anyone you know. Like, and they're so good at it. Like you have like Scott Koblish, like who's been running around doing Deadpool. Like he's a really good friend of mine. And that guy, I mean, he has worked his butt to get where he has, and like the amount of stuff that they have to produce is just unbelievable. So I just realized that I was like, I don't think I can do that. I won't be able to make a living. And I remember even Ron Wagner, he did okay, so he was one of my teachers. I actually recalled him.
Wow.
And I was like, Ron, they want me to come in and letter for Marvel Comics. He's like, you can. He's like, it's not a bad job. Here's the problem. Once you do, you'll be a letterer. Like, they're not going to then be like, hey, let's look at your pencils.
Right.
Understand that. They're not going to want to read your writing. They're not going to look at your coloring. He wasn't wrong. Like, he was like, if you do this, you'll be a letterer. So once I got in, I immediately remembered how important Tom Orzechowski was to the X-Men. And I really took that as my mantra of terms of like, if you talk to Tom, like you'll understand, like it's a calling. It's not a job. It's like he was born to letter, and I really have tried to emulate that idea. I actually just read that like a few months ago, but I was like, yeah, that's it. That's what. So for example, right now there's a site somewhere that lists like the most prolific letterers. And I think it's John Workman.
Yeah.
Richard Starkings.
Sure.
I know there's someone else there, and I'm
Todd Klein.
No, someone. Really? Oh, I guess number 3 I think is me.
Okay.
And so when I saw that a couple years ago, I was like, oh. But because I was churning out so much stuff there for a while, like Marvel was just giving me everything, and I'm really fast, and I was just cranking stuff out. And I've been in the business for so long. A lot of people got in and then took like an 8-year break, learned a computer, jump back in. Those kind of things. I just kept working. And I even think like the Starking stuff, probably some of that is maybe not his. It might be. Well, I don't mean to say it like that. It might be like his buddy, one of his understudies at Comicraft doing.
Right, like Comicraft.
That's all I mean by that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to take that. I think when he puts his name on it, it was him. I don't think he's lettering much anymore. I don't know. Haven't been able to talk.
But it's definitely not the impression I got from our interview with him, where we didn't talk about lettering once.
Yeah, I think he's. I don't know if he's. I don't want to put words. I don't know. I don't know him well enough to say anything other than it seems like he's not lettering as much now. But it's a rough business right now. It's really tough. I even taught for like 10 years at Comics Experiences. Andy Schmidt, he's got an online thing. Some really good courses. Like Chris Sotomayor teaches coloring. They got some really high names, teach, and they had me. And I'm like, Andy, I'm teaching like 10 kids a year to take my job. So here's the thing. So a penciler, does a book a month, maybe 2. If you're Ron Lim in the 90s, you do 7. I don't know how, but you do like 7 of them. But you do 1 or 2 books, right? And the colorist maybe does 3 or 4. Inker 2 or 3. 5. I don't know what their numbers are, but it's like that. I got to do 15.
Yeah.
There's no. Now, granted, I probably overwork. Some people can get away. I probably get away with less, but I'm trying to make. I'm putting kids through college. I'm trying, and I'm really, if I'm not working, I'm getting into trouble. So I try to keep working all the time. And so, yeah, it just making new letterers, and like there's not as many jobs. So like if there's 1,000 jobs, but the letterers have to have 5 times the amount of work anyone else does, there's that many less jobs. And so I had to quit teaching. I felt like I gave back enough, if that makes sense. I wanted to be some kind of, and so I did. And then after I said, I can't do this anymore. Now I really, and to be fair, I have at least 10 students who are out there killing it. Not like they don't work for Marvel and DC, but they do all the other independents, like they work here and there. And so I can't complain. I'm really happy for them, and it's just, take my work. I would tell them that too. Like, instead of do the class, and be like, all right, now go out and steal my work. So, what are you gonna do?
Right. And that kind of explosion in the market where you do need 5 times more work, but we are seeing a substantial growth, and maybe not an expansion from typical mainstream comics like Marvel and DC, but there are a lot of indie comics, Kickstarter projects, webtoons, pop up, so many different versions of comics that we're seeing. Have you felt any of that on your side, that where you've played a little bit more in mainstream?
100%. Well, if you heard my list before, like I like 50, like 8, 9 companies I'm working for. So like, in a perfect world, like DC gives me honestly gives me my best rate. Okay, they can't. It's it's corporation. Although they're really these days they're not being run by the same people. And so, for example, like Jimmy feels that they're not using them because their rate's too high. It could be. I don't know that, but if they're being managed now as opposed to just being let go and let do what they want, it might be that they're cutting back on stuff. That said, I'm still on the Superman titles, But a few years, just like 3 years ago, I was doing like 10 DC titles. I'm down to 2.
Sure.
That's a huge blow. If it wasn't for Valiant and Aftershock and now Bad Idea and all these other companies filling the spot, I would be in serious trouble. And so I definitely see that from other companies. You still have to be careful because I'll just breach this quickly. Like, you go to Kickstarter and you kind of stay away from Indiegogo because the Indiegogo guys are going to be Comicsgate. Yep. And depending and I'm not going to make a statement either way, but you work for Comicsgate and then you probably don't work for other people,
Right.
and vice versa, and so I'd rather work with the mainstream stuff. I mean, as I told my friend, I was like, Comicsgate they've already fed everyone. Like there's no more troughs there. Yeah. And you then get labeled other things. And I don't want to be part of that,
Yeah, sure.
And so, so you still have to be careful what you take, because, I try to vet people, like, okay, well, that's unfortunately the first question. I'm like, so are you Comicsgate? Yeah. No. Okay. Then we continue the conversation. If not, I was like, well, good luck. If they are, which has happened 3 or 4 times, like, good luck to you. I have too much work right now. Right. I'm kind. I'm not going to go either way. I'm not going to give them crap either. But I'm not going to work for them. It's insane. So, yeah.
It kind of acts as, as you lose almost what you call a gatekeeper in the industry where people were selective in talent, you do have those consequences where you do have to take on some of that vetting yourself because you might get associated with something like Comics.
It's happened. It really has. I've seen it happen to a few people. And luckily the letterer is we don't get too much crap, but we do. Like, at one point someone, well, hey, you worked on this. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yep. That's so true.
Yeah, like with kind of like Nick was saying, or alluding to, is the last 8-10 years you've had such an explosion in indie publishers that and Kickstarter and this, that, and the other that with so many more options. I mean, you're spoiled for choice.
You are. And, I'll even haunt Kickstarter from like when I need work. You go on like Kickstarter main page, look for comics, and just if I see people I've known before or something I like. I mean, there's some crap up there too, right? but if you see something you like, I'm like, let me see if they do a letter. And 9 times out of 10 they do, because they haven't thought, like, they've got the artwork ready, it's colored, but like, oh, we haven't letter. I was just going to get my friend's Tom to letter it. You're like, oh, who's Tom? You're like, no one. And like, I think that's the biggest frustration though, is that they think it, like, I've got a good friend that does his own told him I letter it for free, and he was like, no, I want to do it myself. I was like, and I get that. That's Kubert teaches, like, you should do everything yourself, but you shouldn't letter your own book. Unless you really know what you're doing, because you're just destroying everything. You're just destroying your own artwork. You're ruining everything you're ruining everything. And I know we cost money. It sucks. So what are you going to do? But like, you got to pay to get these things done right. And if you buy a letterer these days, you usually get a production artist too. So, which is a good deal. Like, usually, like, you give me the script and the artwork, and I give you the PDF and files for the printer. That's a good deal. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, at least,
it really is. And on top of what letterers bring to the table, I like the idea that you're kind of out there hustling just on Kickstarter and kind of pitching for books like that.
I haven't done it recently, but I was doing it for a while. I was definitely doing it. Cool. I know some of the other guys are doing it because it's a great way to do it. You see a lot of
definitely. So, like, what is your elevator pitch for what a letterer can bring to comics and how it can elevate their comic?
Okay. I guess it would be, one, many of us are using our own sound effect fonts too. So like you're not just getting a clone. I have tons of Star Kings fonts. I got tons of Blambot. That's Nate Picos. I got tons of fonts from other people. I also have some of my own. And I think the big pitch for me would be there's a saying that says you can have quality, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap. But you can only have two of those three things. Okay. With me, you get all three. You'll get the speed, and I don't want to say I'm the fastest because that would be ridiculous to say I'm the fastest in the industry. But if I'm not in the top 5, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I know how fast I am. Like I don't tell people how fast I tell the other guys, shut up. Shut up. You've done this for 30 years. You better be fast at it. You know what I mean? Like and we have all our tricks and stuff too. Yeah. But fast doesn't mean bad. Like I also I pray about this stuff every morning. I'm like, Lord, let me do an awesome job on the work that I'm going to do today, because I want every comic that comes out of me to be the best I can do. And then 3, I understand comics. And so if you're an independent, I'm not going to charge you my DC rate. I'm going to help you get this thing printed, not to kill myself, but I've many times take a pay cut just to be on a project or to help a friend out or help, that kind of thing out. Just to, this comics is life, man. I really, again, I want to go back to this is a calling, and I want to make as many comics as I possibly can. Rob Lee, a good friend of mine, is an awesome letterer and so forth. He's ready to retire. He's got his retirement plan. He's putting money away and so forth. He's going to retire. He's like, yo, man. He's like, lettering till you die is not a retirement plan. I was like, you're right, but I plan on doing that. Like John Workman, man. I just saw him a couple of years ago in Maryland, my man is still lettering,
Oh,
and
he
won the,
did some really unique work on an AWA book.
Yes, so he's amazing. So he won that year. I got nominated that year for Ninjak. This is like the last of the what was the award that Baltimore was putting out, and now I think New York Comic Con just bought it.
I don't know.
Like the awards are. It's not it's a Harvey's.
Harvey's.
Okay? The Harvey Kurtzman Award. So that was like Baltimore's award as opposed to the Eisner's, right? In California. So I think New York is picking up that ball. Like that's going to be their award. We'll see. But I was up out here for Ninjak, and John was up for. It's that stuff that Walt Simonson was doing, all that Asgardian stuff.
Oh yeah.
Okay? And
Northmith books.
Right, gorgeous stuff, right?
Yeah.
John doesn't even use a computer. John letters stuff by hand. He's still doing everything by hand.
He's still taking it old school, man.
Exactly. And so I remember talking to him, and I remember like he was saying, "Yeah, I just started everything by hand." I was like, "Well, you deserve the reward. Like, you deserve." I was like, I'm happy to be nominated with you then, if that's the case, And I really wanted to win, but I was more than happy to see him win, So yeah.
Well, and I'm sure there's still a handful of old school guys out there doing it by hand. I think there's got to be.
The problem is production now. So, like, if they are, it's like maybe I think Eliopoulos does it with Savage. I want to say with Savage Dragon, but I could be. I know for a long time he was. Now that could have changed. And some people do it different. Like I think it's Valentino has a certain way he likes his letterers to work because he wants it to be. I think it's digital, but then they print it out and then they paste it up anyway. I don't know. I don't pretend to know all these different things, but the problem is like it's such a costly thing to have someone letter it by hand. So if I can, let's say I can do let's say I can do a book in 6 hours. To hand letter it will take 20 hours, and so I've immediately lost 2 days of work, and so for example, my rate at DC is like almost half of what my hand lettering rate was. Wow. And so if you have your hand letterer, you're going to have to pay him a lot of money, $40-50 a page kind of thing, because Otherwise, they can't afford to eat.
Sure.
It's too, and it's such. If you stop doing it, you still it's still like riding a bike. You still retain your handwriting and stuff, but it's tough. Like my carpal tunnel I'd be destroyed. I mean, like even now when I draw for too long, I get like kind of gnarled up, and so I can't even imagine holding that crow-kill all day long and just sitting there lettering. So, I mean, I did it for a while, but like at this age, I can't. I honestly don't know how my hand would take it. I guess you get used to it. I don't know, but I don't know of anyone else other than John who's had it lettering by hand, but I could be wrong. I'm sure that you're right. I'm sure there's a couple of people out there. I just don't know who it is. So maybe John Babcock. If you remember his name, he's been around for a while. I was a good friend of mine. He worked with me at the bullpen, and I know he's a purist, like a serious purist.
Mm-hmm.
So he might be doing some things by hand still. That could be.
Okay. We're closing in on top of our hour here, and I know you talked a little bit when we first got started that you were in a couple bands, and it's pretty widely known that you're a metal letterer. I mean, when you're on a project, you're going to bring that influence.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about your love for music and how that found its way into your artwork as a letterer and just as an artist.
Yeah, no, it does. It definitely does. My father is an opera singer. And I say jokingly that I was musically abused as a child. It's not true, I had great parents, as you've gathered from some of my other comments, right? But it was like, I wasn't allowed to listen to anything until I was like 12, 13. And I'm not kidding. Like it was mad. It was everything else but popular music. I didn't get into the Beatles until I was like 13.
Whoa.
Once you do, I just exploded.
Yeah,
I went from Priest to Iron Maiden and then to Metallica. Like I was the only kid that I knew of Metallica before my entire high school did. I had like a little bumper, like I got my car and I'm talking like Seek and Destroy. I'd heard, and no one in my high school had heard it. They were listening to Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and I'm like, no, Metallica, and so I went to Cubert school, and then when you get to school, you got to go harder or you go one way or the other. And so I met a good couple friends there, and we just went harder. So it just went to Slayer, and so it's just Slayer. So, and so it just that was my identity, I really had planned to move out to California and die in Guns N' Roses. Like I'd be the one to die of heroin, because it's my character. That would be me. Like I'm the idiot, right? And so thankfully I have a beautiful wife, and she was like, I'll love you forever, but if you go to California, just like have a nice life, So I was like, all right, I won't go to California. And I'm serious. Like that was real close, So instead I went to art school and found that love instead, and was. But it's always been about heavy music. You work late into night, listen to heavy music, heavy, everything's heavy, especially when you're younger. I'm trying to be more metal than you and all that kind of stuff, thrash is huge. And then, then grunge came out and really kind of hurt everything, but I was still metal like this. So I just go further underground, right? So now it's death and all that. And so, I listened all. And so then my friend, so that affected my music. Like it definitely affected my work. Like so, I said my logos would look like it. When you're on staff at Marvel, you do all the cover copy. Or back then, this issue, everyone dies, all that fun stuff, which you don't have anymore, which is very sad. But we would do stuff like that, and so the editors would know. For the most part, you'd be paired up like they would. Each month they would switch editors. Like, so one month I'd be working for the Tom Brevoort office. The next month it would be for the Ralph Macchio office, et cetera, down the line, right? Mm-hmm. But if something came in that was metal, they'd be like, hey, Dave, do this one, So I was like, cool, all right, And my early lettering was really, I'm a fan of digital lettering. I don't want to go back and say it because my early lettering was really, it was still rough. Some guys, they got better faster than I did. Like Pat Brousseau was like, boom, he was like almost instantly good kind of thing. And it took me a couple years to really get better. So I I'm probably a better digital letterer, but if you look at some of my old lettering, it's kind of metal, like it's raw. It's kind of weird, but it is, And then it all came to it came to fruition. My good friend Zena Sarfin, she worked at Marvel for a number of years, and she's worked around publishing industry and stuff, and music, and so she worked for Terrorizer and all this stuff, and she would just get concerts. And here we are in Manhattan, and I think I saw Slayer from like 93 to 2000 like 30 times. Like no lie.
Here I was impressed with my 5 times.
Okay, they would play New York, like every time they'd play New York like 7 times, right? I'd go all 7 times because Gina would be like, hey, I got tickets again, got tickets. So I saw saw them with Incubus, I saw System of a Down before everyone knew they were opening for Slayer. We booed.
I saw them on that tour too.
And they got booed off stage every night.
Yes, they did. I had that exact same experience.
Yeah, listen, I don't think I saw any band ever not get booed off stage from Slayer. Then these days, like it's a little different, but like in those clubs, you couldn't open for Slayer, and then the bands would be like, we know Slayer's next. Don't worry.
Well, what was funny was like, I guess System was a last-minute addition to that bill because nobody knew they were actually supposed to be playing.
Right.
So everyone else on the bill is played, and so Slayer's supposed to be next. And here comes fucking System of a Down with Serge Tankian is high as shit.
Right.
Here's the guitarist with his pink hair going on,
Absolutely.
and they're playing the weirdest non-Slayer metal imaginable. Right. And this is 97, 98, you can just imagine how hostile this crowd is.
Oh, it's insane. Insane. I thought I think they played this. I saw them 3 or 4 times on that tour.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the first night I saw them, I didn't know, by the 3rd or 4th time, I was like, oh, Sugar, I know this song,
Yeah. It's all right.
The first time, dude, I think they played 3 songs. And after the first song, you couldn't even hear them. Slayer. So unbelievable. Yeah, and that's everyone has those stories because that's what happens with Slayer. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. That same concert, a light fixture fell and hit somebody in the head, and just blood and glass everywhere. Man, had to be taken out on a stretch. It's that's Slayer.
Which would highlight the problem. The only problem I was having at that time was that my wife's we have little babies, right? And I'm going to see these shows, and I'm going once a week, and I'm going by myself. Because Xena couldn't always go, and so the craziest thing is, man, you hardcore is going to see Slayer by yourself, yeah, what? It's me, usually you got your buddies, and you're all like, okay, if someone gets into a fight, someone's got your back. Yeah, it's a different story, man. You go by yourself to a Slayer concert. It was a lot of fun though. I had a blast, but that was part of that really. I had kids are all around the same time, and I went from wearing, if you saw their old pictures of Marvel bullpens and books and things, and you'll see I'm wearing Cosby sweaters and stuff. And it's great because you did no one cared, you weren't supposed to wear black yet, right?
Right.
It wasn't in 95, 96, it was 97, 98. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to wear all black, okay. And so from that point on, then it became, who the heck is this guy at Marvel? Scott Koblich's, I'll go back to the funniest stories. He comes up for the first day, and I've been at Marvel for a number of years now, a couple of years. And so he walks in, and I'm in full, Hetfield. At this point, Hetfield. I just look like Hetfield. Okay? And he's trying to get in, and he's his first time. He's wearing a 3-piece suit and everything, And we get on the elevator together, and we'd ride up, and we get off the floor, and he's like, oh my goodness. I have my key card, and I go in, and he was like, you work here? I was like, yeah, man. He's like, am I overdressed? I was like, you are so overdressed. Because even the editors are wearing sweats and stuff. I mean, but I get it. You're supposed to wear a suit when you go to, when you go to an interview, right? That's just a little thing. But I was, the metal thing. I mean, it works for you. It works against you. When things changed and Marvel got a bit corporate, they probably were not happy with me in general. Not that I was a problem. I was never a problem. It's just, here I am coming to work, and who's this dude? And then they I'm running a department, and here I am talking, and I'm not going to mention names then, but they were like, who is this guy who we're going to have run a department? little did they know, I know what I'm doing, you know. And so sometimes it does work against you. Like you get followed. I usually get followed around Toys R Us all the time, just like, oh, he's going to steal something, you know. It's like, no, I'm just going to buy some toys. So yeah, it's fun. But being a Dead Cowboy is my main band. Mm-hmm. I play bass and sing, and I growl a couple of songs. That one is like it's White Zombie and Metallica. It's not too heavy. I can't. I call myself a Christian, and there's as much as I can listen to Slayer. Playing Slayer becomes a different.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard to say like, oh, Satan.
Yeah, those themes.
It gets a bit much, But again, that doesn't mean I don't listen to it. I can enjoy whatever I want. I say I have freedom in Christ. But so yeah, but I also then COVID hits, and here in Pennsylvania was a wonderful place where mid-state Harrisburg, we had just 10 years ago, we could play 15 bars. Before COVID hit, 3 of them burned down, 4 of them closed, and then COVID hit, and we got nowhere to play.
Oh, man.
I mean, when I say there's nowhere to play, there's 1 bar to play. So one of my guitarists, not the one I mentioned before, Ian Strong, the other guitarist, he's a country boy. And so he started up a country band on the side, and believe it or not, I'm actually sitting over there playing bass in a country band. Funded by a female singer, and she's this hot little chick, and she can sing her ass off like a Miranda Lambert, if you're familiar with any country. And I get to drink.
I know that one.
What's that?
I said I know her.
Okay, yeah,
I actually do know that one.
Right, and we're trying to do like the whole like it's like Southern rock. It's like Leonard Skinner. They got me singing a couple of Johnny Cash songs. So we're trying to keep it as cool as possible. And I get to drink as much whiskey as I want. So, it's not.
Can't go wrong there.
Playing, yeah, I'm not doing. So I get to be inebriated. So I don't get to do that often. So when I do, I take advantage of it.
Is bass the primary instrument you play?
Yeah, I'm too big to play anything else. Like literally, if you see me with a guitar, I'm like this.
Yeah.
Even my bass, I play BC Riches because they're long scale. I play a 5-string Widow, which is like most people pick it up and it looks like like someone picking up like a giant's weapon or something. That's what it looks like. It's like, but for me, it fits perfect. So. It's
interesting. Yeah. What bassists do you take inspiration from?
It's Steve Harris. Period.
Ah.
There's no. Iron Maiden is the greatest band of all time.
They're pretty cool.
That's my statement. I'm sticking with it because and now over a period of time, like it's now like 50 years now. I'm now 52, and listening to the stuff for 40 years or 35 years or whatever. You could put me on a desert island with every Iron Maiden disc, and I'll never get bored. And I think that's even the new stuff. I brought my son to see this Book of Souls just a couple.
Book of Souls, man, that album is incredible.
Greatest album since Power Slave. I can't believe how good Book of Souls is. Actually,
if you sat there and told me, yes, there's this metal album with an 18-minute song on it, my first thought is it's going to be.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. For like 7 minutes just to get through the intro.
I think they got me with Ryman Ancient Mariner way back in the day.
Sure.
So any song after that, like I learned to play bass off Ryman Ancient Mariner kind of thing.
Oh wow.
And so anything, they're my favorite. Slayer was like I went through my phases. Metallica was my favorite.
Curtain, man. I mean,
I'm unfortunately, I'm an artist. I have no problem with where Metallica went. I really don't. I don't enjoy it. But I don't have a problem with it. But if you know anything about music or anything, the first 2 albums are Dave Mustaine and Cliff Burton, and then Master of Puppets is like all Cliff Burton and James Hetfield. So, and once Cliff dies, you can literally feel everything leave. And I love Justice for All is a great album. That's not, it doesn't take away from
Poor Jason Newsted's not on it.
He's not on it. And I love
Literally.
Jason too. Jason's awesome. It's terrible. That whole thing's terrible.
Poor guy. Yeah, like there's a whole long thing about Newsted that we could spend a whole.
I'm sure we could. Yeah, we could.
On.
And I even like the stuff he's doing now. I started doing. He does with his weird eclectic country band he's got. He does a cover of Cocaine Blues for Cash. So now I'm doing it too. It's like, that's one I'm gonna steal. So I'm doing that one in a country band. But you go through phases. Like, so I went Metallica, and dude, I looked like Hetfield. I can show you old stuff. I looked exactly like Hetfield. And then went to Slayer because you go harder. And then after Slayer, like, you can go. I don't like the screamer. I like some of it. I like, I went to so many Ozfests and so forth and seen Skeleton Witch. I saw all those guys, man. I've seen every screamer you've ever seen. They all sound the same. And I enjoy it, but I'm going to go back to Zakk Wylde before I ever go see Skeleton Witch again, And I like Skeleton Witch, the stuff all sounds the same. So I'm really more like, you really have to have some kind of voice, even if it's Tom Araya. I still need to have some kind of tone in your voice. So I went back, and once when Bruce, I went back to Iron Maiden as being like, so if someone says, what's your favorite band? I go to Iron Maiden, so.
I love the Ozfest shout out in there. So I do have a fun story with Serge Tankian. The last Ozfest I went to, Serge Tankian showed up when he was doing his solo act outside of System of a Down.
Yes.
And it was like a stringed band behind him, so it's like a big band, sort of like an orchestra. And he had like fairy wings and everything. And it was almost the same reaction to what y'all were describing when they opened for Slayer.
Yeah, that's
well, now they're booing because they're like, just get System back together.
Right? Well, they did those 2 songs, but apparently those 2 songs are supposed to be. Is it Scars of Broadway? His off. I think
no, that was the other guys.
Okay.
On his name.
Okay, so the
Serge
songs. I think those were supposed to be Scars of Broadway songs. I'm not sure. Those they weren't even supposed to be System, but I guess they got all together. That's a rough band, man, because you now got the drummer is like hardcore right wing, and I don't think the rest of the band is. Not sure how that works. I know my country band's the same thing. I got one right wing dude, I got one left wing dude. We just don't talk about it. I'll just leave it alone.
Like, man, we're just gonna play some music.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Here's some Fireball. Shut up.
That's awesome. Well, I guess we're a little over our hour now, but I guess if I had to just put one final question there to you, Dave, it's where does the intersection of heavy metal and lettering collide in your best in your career? Okay.
I'll put it instead of saying metal, let's say musician.
Okay.
And I'll go for being a bass player. Okay. Being a bass player is the same as being the letterer. Okay. So the guitarist is the penciler, or the vocalist is the penciler, right? Or it has a vocalist is the penciler, the guitarist is the inker or the colorist, the drummer is this. The letterer holds it down. The bass holds it down. And so without the bass, you get White Stripes. Ugh. Not a fan ever. Sorry. sorry for the White Stripes fan. Or like there were even some old heavy. There were Fastway. There was a couple of bands back there that didn't have a bass player, and I can't do it. Sorry, like you've lost me. But because you like holds it down, and so the lettering holds it down. Like so, for example, right, a bad bass player, you're gonna hear it, man. You're gonna totally hear like that bass player is missing notes. He's supposed to be with the drummer. He's supposed to be on time. What is going on? Same thing. If that lettering is bad, it's going to screw up the whole comic. And so and even in my own life, I'm like, I end up being very much like my personality is very much a supporter. Like, get behind my friend, like, yo, man, you can do this, and let's make this comic, that kind of thing. So I think that's just me. Like I've called like I'm a hype man. Like I'm like, so like you've got. Flavor. You got Flavor. I'll Flavor Flav, as opposed to, Chuck D, who's doing all the work. Flav, like, yeah, man. That's kind of so. The bass player is the same thing. Like you just bringing it up, and I'm gonna follow. Lay it down. So that probably is the closest I could, get it. I think that's a pretty good analogy between the two,
I can dig it.
Yeah.
Well, Dave Sharpe, thank you so much for your time this evening and hanging out with
you.
us here on the Comic Watchers show. We want to thank our sponsors, Frankie's Comics, Carson's Corner, and Lemon Juice Comics, and thank all y'all for listening. We do appreciate everyone who hangs out with us for the hour and change, whether you are participating or not. Come check us out at comic-watch.com. The show itself is on Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, et cetera, wherever finer podcasts are shown.
Excellent.
Heard, whatever. Thank you all so much, and we will be back next week. Until then, be good to each other and read a comic and support your local comic shop.
Read comics. Read more comics.
Yes. Listen to Dave.
Excellent.